Thanks for joining us today. So, the purpose of this series of videos that we're going to be putting out here with Gatlet Solar is to help you as the consumers and the DIY guys to be able to figure out what panels are really going to look like when you get your hands on them, right? Everybody's always chasing that beautiful black on black, trying to get that perfect black panel. And if you look online, you'll see a lot of different places will try to Photoshop their pictures to make them look as black as humanly possible. But when you get them, you don't necessarily know what you're going to be getting into. So what we did, we ordered a bunch of different panels from a bunch of different manufacturers, and we're going to be breaking them down one at a time and showing you guys at home all of the angles, all the pictures, all the specs, everything you can imagine, so that you can go forward and make your best decisions and get panels that are going to really make you happy and look amazing on your house. So today we're doing the SILFAB 430, and you can see it's a gorgeous black panel. Kind of move things around. As we get closer to it, we're going to kind of examine it from different angles, look at all sorts of different stuff, different distances. You can see all of the wafers if you look close enough, and you can absolutely still see the threads, the solder traces as it goes through. But one of the things that we'll look at here in a second is, how's it look from distance? How's it look from different angles? And does it give you that true black on black that everybody seems to go for? SILFAB is an incredibly popular brand. They have an awesome warranty. Their product failure rate, from what I've seen, is incredibly low. And a lot of the black on black panels that you're seeing from some of the big national guys, they use SILFAB products. Sorry for the wind, but we're about 50 feet away. And as you can see, the panel in the background gives a nice black on black appearance. If I turn around and look at it, I can still just barely see the individual wafers that make up the panel stacked, but I don't see the silver solder traces hardly at all. So we're going to look at some other angles as well. Now this is a super low angle with the sun over my left shoulder. We're going to kind of just move to the left so that you can see how the appearance of the panel changes. Imagine this on your house at whatever the tilt of your roof is, and this gives you a better idea of what you're going to see, what people are going to see, what your neighbors are going to see, what Google Maps is going to see. And then you're never going to get that full straight on view unless you do a ground mount. Here's the nice close-up in the sun. Here's what it looks like in the shade with it turned around. But keep in mind, I think my camera is playing some tricks on me, because I can clearly see all the traces now that we don't have any glare from the sun. On the back of the SILFAB 430, we see our MC4 connectors. They're located in the middle of the panel as opposed to the top. You've got your bypass diodes in the middle, industry standard. It's got a white reflective backing on it. The MC4 connectors themselves are legitimate MC4 connectors. Right? They are 12 gauge wire, copper PV. You should be able to read all of that from the video there. But everything's clearly labeled. They did a nice job. Not seeing a bunch of extra sealant around the wire connectors to the panels. Then we've got the bypass diode here, and then finally the other MC4 connector down there. Everything looks really good, very well done. All the crimps obviously super secure. They're not going to be able to warranty these things like they do if they were putting out garbage. So SILFAB, they always make a great product. I haven't seen a whole lot of these fail during my time. We took the tape measure to this thing. True to form, all the specs on the spec sheet are accurate. The one thing that I wanted to pull out that I wasn't seeing on the spec sheet, maybe I overlooked it, but got a set of dial calipers here. How thick is the actual aluminum that they use for this? The thicker the aluminum, the less deflection you're going to get in the wind. So get that nice and tight, coming back out. All right. We're looking at basically just barely, maybe just barely over 2 millimeter thick aluminum rails there. So, should hold up really nice and be nice and good. We're going to compare these specs with other panels that we review in this series, and that way you guys can see how other panels match up against the SILFAB brand. All right, here's the spec sheet for the 430. If you want your own copy, you can find a link down in the video description section below. SILFAB makes panels in Toronto, Canada, Washington State, I believe, and I think they opened another plant here down in South Carolina. All right, let's dive into the technical specs here. You'll notice we've got numbers for the 420 panel and the 430 watt panel. So we're looking at the higher grade panel for this product line. This data is divided out as STC, which is standard testing conditions, if you didn't already know, and NOCT, which is roughly translated as something closer to real-world conditions. We'll address all of this in another video later on. So when I'm looking at this panel, my eyes immediately go to the VOC, or voltage open circuit. This is the high end of the voltage that I could see after a cold night. The sun just starts peeking out, hits my panels before they're really producing any power. If I'm using a string inverter and have too many panels attached, you could overvolt your system and either cause a direct short through the 600 volt jacket of the wire, or you could let the magic smoke out of your inverter, or both. Both are obviously bad. That's why we're going to use this VOC number along with the temperature coefficients farther down in this for some calculations to figure out what's the highest voltage this panel is going to make at low temps. Just a reminder, panels are extra efficient in the cold weather, and you can see increases in voltage and amperage, but mainly voltage, when it's really cold outside. This has a cumulative effect in string systems as the voltage stacks in the string. So after looking at that, now we're going to look at the voltage Pmax under the NOCT section. This is the voltage I'm expecting to see while the system is producing. As you can see, 31 volts is much lower than the VOC under STC at 38.9 volts. Why is this? Because as we start pulling amperage out of the system, it will cause the voltage to sag. Totally normal in a string system. Voltage and amperage have an inverse relationship here. When one increases, the other one's going to decrease. Amperage we're seeing below 14 amps in any case, so unless you're stacking panels in parallel, and a lot of them, you should be good to use smaller wire. If you're not stacking panels, you can use 14 gauge wire. We always use 10 gauge PV wire. 10 gauge is rated up to 30 amps, so you could potentially stack two strings in parallel here. I don't advise that. It better be a great south-facing system where everything's equal, otherwise you're just going to invite a lot of problems. Moving on down, we see the measurements. Panel size is 68 by just shy of 45 inches. This panel, she's a little shorter, wider panel, which is fine. If if it helps you play your game of Tetris, fitting these panels into a roof, this works really well. But I personally like the longer, skinnier panels. They're more cost efficient, as you can fit more panels per linear foot of railing on a roof or a ground mount system. But if you're using a railless system, then it doesn't matter at all. Just use whatever you need. Panel weight is only 46 pounds. It's relatively light in the panel world, not bad at all. So if you have a lot of panels that you're moving at any given time, or you got to sling panels all day or carry a bunch of panels on a roof, this is not a bad panel to do. There's definitely heavier panels out there that make it a lot rougher trying to hump them up a ladder. Looking at the glass thickness, we are looking at 3.2 millimeters, which is great to see. There's a lot of panels out there with 2 millimeter thick glass, which is fine, but 3.2 gives you just a little bit more protection against projectiles, hail, falling, tree, limbs and stuff like that. Small stuff. Big things are going to go straight through a panel. So, yay, homeowners insurance claims. Warranty stuff is always something important and on everybody's mind. You see here, it's got a 25-year module warranty, but it has the little asterisk, which, you follow that down. It's really a 12-year warranty unless you jump through some extra hoops and get that warranty extended. I'd say it's probably a good idea to get that extended. It's always nice to have that extra peace of mind. Measurements here at the bottom of the page for the panel. We compared these to everything In person, everything seems very accurate to us. So we had no problems here. Everything matched up well. So if you're looking at, where are the holes at, how thick is everything, this worked out really well. All right, let's move on to the next part of this review. Just for fun, since it is sunny, let's go ahead and check the voltage on this. The data plate on this says volt open circuit should be 38.91. Now, it's pretty sunny. There's not a lot of clouds in the sky, but we don't have the perfect angle. So let's see what type of open circuit voltage we get with this one. If you look on the MC4 connectors themselves, it will say plus or minus. So you'll get, positive down here. The corresponding other one's negative. We've got our multimeter set in DC volts. Make sure it's DC, not AC, and always double check your settings. That way you don't fry your multimeter. This one is kind of a family heirloom, and I love it. So can't even read the front of it anymore, but I know where things are, and that's all that matters. So positive in there, negative in there. Bounce between 37.9 and 38.0 volts for voltage open circuit. So relatively true to form on the data plate. Unfortunately, we don't have a way of putting it under load to see what the Pmax voltage will give us, but just to clarify, so also, because someone's going to yell at me in the comments, if you get your positive and your negative hooked up when you're measuring DC voltage, it doesn't do anything. It's just going to give you a negative if you haven't known that before. So it gives you the same reading, just gives you negative. What I was referring to is make sure your settings on your dial are right. Otherwise, you're going to possibly let the magic smoke out of it, smoke a resistor or something like that inside. That's always a bad day. Guys, that about wraps it up for the SILFAB 430. In this video, we went over the color, we went over the spec sheets, measurements, everything's true to form to the spec sheets. Numbers are solid. We looked at some measurements. SILFAB 430, it's a great panel. I would love this one a lot. I wouldn't hesitate in the least to put this on any of my projects, jobs, or even my house. So if you're looking for an awesome panel, this is one of the panels that we're going to be comparing all the other panels to. So in the future, if you want to see some of the other panels and how they compare to the SILFAB 430, please keep watching, like and subscribe to our page. We're happy to try to keep pushing out videos that are going to help folks and try to make them as entertaining as possible. Check the comments and descriptions below. We'd like to try to supply folks with promo codes to try to save a little bit of money. These promo codes will be good with Signature Solar, but they have an expiration date, so we'll try to keep them refreshed as often as possible, and as they go through. Wanted to give a big thanks to my friends over at Signature Solar for letting me buy this panel and a bunch of other single one-offs. They made some exceptions for me and strapped them to some other pallets that we purchased. So I'm really excited to keep working on all of these videos to be able to show you guys at home what these panels really look like, and hopefully give some performance details, all the stuff that you can't really pull from a website.